Hello there. I'm Rob Hudson. I'm a member of the law firm Frost Brown Todd. I'm one of the volunteers with the NKBA. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the NKBA Legends Series. In this series, we interview distinguished Northern Kentucky, Greater Cincinnati lawyers. And what we hope to do is help elevate the profession. And our particular focus is on what it takes to succeed as an attorney, both personally and professionally. Today's program will be recorded. It'll be made available to help guide the next generations of lawyers in our region. For live attendees, be sure to post your questions in the Q&A or chat features, and I'll ask as many of them as I can at the end of the program. It's another great day for our Legend series because we're joined today by Brian Dunham. Brian has had a remarkable legal career in Northern Kentucky, spanned 25 years as a trusted counselor, corporate and real estate lawyer, and community servant. He has unique experiences that include successful stints at a medium-sized firm, a larger firm, and now with his founding of Dunham Law. He has all the accolades. He's AV rated by Martindale, recognized as a super lawyer for business and corporate law in the Ohio and Kentucky edition. He's one of 17 lawyers currently certified by the OSBA as a specialist in business, commercial, and industrial real property. He's served as the NKBA former treasurer, as a director, as a member of the nominating committee, chair of the business and tax law section. He's presented at numerous seminars for the NKBA on various topics. He's currently the vice chair of the KBA's business law section, former chair of that section. He serves as vice chair of the Kenton County Planning Commission and in various faith-based leadership posts. Brian, welcome and thanks for being a part of the Legends program.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, and we typically start out our interviews with covering some of the ground with respect to your early experiences and influences prior to your practice of law. We had an opportunity to talk a bit yesterday, and I was able to hear about some of your early influences. But prior to your practice of law, what were some of the keys for you in terms of events in your life and people who were influential?
Well, as far as people, the people tend to say their mom, dad. I would say that's the case here as well, but neither of them had anything to do with the law or even kind of a traditional business role. My mother was a nurse, and my father was in sales. But the one thing I picked up from both of them is they were really hard workers. They were, just did their jobs really well and worked really hard, and they knew their role as an employee, and they worked hard and were dependable and reliable, and that really made a point on us growing up. Another sort of influence was Murr Grayson. A lot of people know Murr. He's actually my uncle, my mother's brother, and he was president of Covington Trust, and then later the local head of Huntington Bank when I was growing up. And he was very good about, reaching out to me regularly and inviting me to, a fancy business-like lunch, at the Metropolitan Club or Queen City Club, and just to kind of see what I was up to, what I was struggling with, what I wanted to do, and look for opportunities for me, and, kind of help me network and get opportunities that I otherwise wouldn't have gotten.
Well, and so you had a champion in Murr, and it turns out Murr's been a champion for so many people in our region over the years. Yeah. Just a wonderful, wonderful community servant and a great role model. But prior to the time you were practicing law, a lot of us just had really awful jobs that maybe helped us build character. I'm not sure your jobs were all that awful, but what were some of the ones that kind of helped you down the road prior to your practice?
So one, the Gap, I'm assuming the Gap is still a functioning retail outfit, but I worked at the world famous Florence Mall for the Gap, and that was interesting because it was, it taught me how to work in sales, right, and how to interact with folks and try and be persuasive, and so that was interesting. The other kind of one that made a real big impact on me is my grades weren't particularly doing well, and I was at Northern, and I was just trying to kind of figure things out. And I got a job working at UPS loading tractor trailers. I was even a member of the Teamsters, which, not a lot of us business lawyers are members of the Teamsters. And I'll never forget, I was loading a tractor trailer one summer, and it was blazing hot in the trailer, and I had to load an entire truckload of lawnmowers, boxed up lawnmowers. And they were like flying in the trailer, pinning me against the wall. And I probably weighed 125 pounds at that point. And I said, God did not put me on this planet, to use my brute strength and coordination. He gave me this brain, and I needed to start, looking for ways to actually put that into use. So.
Well, did you always want to be a lawyer, from the very beginning? Or was it something that you sort of came to over time?
I was intrigued with it as a younger person. I knew lawyers like through family connections, like Mark Arnzen and Bill Robinson, and that everybody thought really highly of, I respected, but I didn't really totally understand what they did. And I know that John and Bonnie Yeager, who are family friends, and John started Ashley Development, which is a very respected builder and developer here in town. And I'll never forget sitting around the dining room table with them, and Bonnie telling me I needed to be a lawyer. And I don't know why she said that, but she thought I would be good at it. And it started me thinking that, well, if they think I could do it, maybe I can.
Yeah, I love that. Just a word of encouragement, some simple praise can have such a huge impact. And
yeah,
when we talked about yesterday, you had some pretty unique views on law school that are, I would say, Brian, outside the norm. From my perspective, I was just I just wanted to get out and get going. And tell us about your law school experience, how you viewed it, and what's your advice to law students about law school?
So, early on in college, I was more of the party animal type of guy and wasn't as good of a student. And so I really had to kick it into gear when I decided I wanted to go to law school. And I did it. I mean, I worked. It was if you looked at my transcript, you would think it was two different human beings, that there was no way that this is the same person. But so by the time I had gotten positioned to apply for law school, I only applied to one. I applied to Chase, and I'm like, if I get into Chase, I'm going to and get this opportunity, I'm going to take full advantage of everything that offers. And that's what happened. And, related to that, I worked for the Campbell County Attorney's Office. I started when Paul Tweehus was the Campbell County Attorney, and I was working as an unpaid intern when I was at Northern. And there was a younger assistant county attorney there, and he was just finished law school, and he said he loved law school. And every time I had mentioned going to law school, everybody said how miserable it was, that they hated it. And he said, I loved law school. And I'm like, you're the first person I've ever heard say that. And he said, I got in and I said, if there was anything remotely interesting, whether it was a club or a class or an internship or whatever that I came across in law school, I said yes. And I tried everything that interested me. And if it was a good fit, I stuck with it. If it wasn't a good fit, I at least realized that, hey, this isn't for me, and it helped me further fine tune my direction. And I followed that same sort of advice when I was in law school. And, I got, I did the joint JD MBA program because it gave me the opportunity to get out with the 2 complementary degrees and save a year in the process. I got involved with the Student Bar Association, was ultimately our SBA president. I wrote on to law review. I took on multiple internships, and I just really, my attitude was, this is a great opportunity, and it was a time where I could invest in myself, and it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's a mature approach to law school, but you went kind of straight through school then, right?
Yes.
You had undergrad and straight to then doing the JD MBA program. But you had mentioned county attorney and some of your opportunities there. What were some of the early jobs that you had in law, and some of the lessons that you learned from those jobs that had an impact?
Yeah. So my first kind of legal related role was the county attorney position, and I because it was Campbell County and Northern was in Campbell County, they had an ongoing internship program, and so I got in and did that internship and really didn't do too much, didn't have much by way of responsibility, but I got my foot in the door. And then when the guy who I was working underneath, who was handling criminal complaints, when private individuals would come in to file a complaint, a misdemeanor that wasn't seen by law enforcement, they would do these private complaints. And so when he went to the State Police Academy, and so they hired me to replace him. And I also there was doing the collection of the delinquent tax bills for the county. And so they taught me how to, do a title exam, and which was great experience to, as a foundation for my real estate practice, and understanding how filing foreclosures and how litigation process works, analyzing statutes on the criminal side of it. So it was great practical experience, and it all started because I got my foot in the door and proved myself. And the other thing that made an impact is Paul Tweehuse was a great guy. He was a Campbell County attorney for many years, and it's an elected position, but he wasn't this grandstanding type of politician, that chastised defendants unnecessarily just because it got him political, leverage. He treated people fairly, even the defendants. He treated his employees well and respectfully. And he had a really good approach. He would include me in the staff meetings with the prosecutors, even though I was just a young guy. And I'll never forget him calling out his prosecutors because it had gotten back to them that they were afraid of a particular defense attorney in town. I think it was Harry Hellings at the time, who was kicking their butt in Campbell County District Court on DUIs, and they were afraid to try cases. And he said, look, I would much rather you try these cases and lose and become better lawyers in the process than settle cases that don't deserve to be settled. And I just thought that was just a really awesome approach to, how you should practice law and how you should encourage the folks that work for you. The other piece is I worked at Coors and Bassett. When I was in law, I didn't know really what business law was, although it seemed intriguing to me, and I didn't know what that practice looked like. I had corporations law, enjoyed that a lot. Bob Seaver was my professor, and I actually got the book award, which is one of my crowning achievements in law school. But I met with him after the fact, and I said, look, I said, I'm interested in business law, but I don't know any business lawyers. I don't even know where to start, who to talk to. And he ultimately got me hooked up with his wife, who worked at Coors and Bassett, who needed somebody to help with an IPO, and got my foot in the door there. So, that was just an opportunity that was great experience for me that came about just kind of, well, I didn't know it. I was essentially networking there with Bob, and it led to some really neat stuff.
Yeah, just by expressing an interest and maybe asking for help and information, I mean, more often than not, people are going to step up and try to help. I think sometimes in law school, I was trying to hide from professors, whereas Counselor Dunham was stepping up and getting some guidance. So this, in choosing the field of focus for your law practice,
Mhm.
It sounds like you had some success in the corporations class. You're getting an MBA, so there was probably a natural gravitation towards business law. But what advice do you have for folks who are trying to choose a focus?
Well, I think, I think as a foundation, you need to be passionate about it, have a really solid, strong, authentic interest in that area. Because it's, whatever your path is, it's going to be hard. Our jobs are not easy jobs. And it's going to be unbearable, really, if you're doing something that you aren't truly interested in. And so, I would spend time getting a feel for, the different areas and what the practice looks like, right? I originally thought maybe I wanted to be a prosecutor and did the county attorney thing, and that was interesting, but I realized that wasn't for me. And then I just started kind of pivoting. And so, especially early on when, you've got the luxury earlier on in your career without mortgages and, a bunch of kids to feed and that sort of stuff, to feel things out, to see what you might like. The other piece of it, I think you need to really understand, the business model there, right? Like, I hear so many younger law students and young, who say that they want to be some sort of very narrow type of lawyer. Well, it's the likelihood of them getting a job and having a long-term career in some of these really narrow areas is not great. And they also need to have something that, that has some legs and, they'll be able to pay bills with. I know that for whatever reason, all the parents I've talked to lately, they keep saying that their kids want to be environmental lawyers. And I said, what? Because they want to change the planet. And I get that, but in practice, environmental law is not very busy right now, and it's very narrow. You don't have a lot of enforcement activity going on, with the governments, and it's just not a lot of action going on. And so you got to be practical about things, I think, as well, when you're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, that choosing a practice area that, I don't know, this is probably not an appropriate term, but a target-rich environment for clients and client relationships, and in your area of partnering with businesses to help them grow and help them realize their opportunities. Every business needs a corporate lawyer, so I think it's a very natural fit.
Yeah, related to that too is, I think it's important. You gotta, at least for me, it's been important that I struck a nice balance of having a narrow enough practice that, I could develop some true expertise in something that I was very interested in, but not so narrow that, with the change of a law or the change of the economy or an industry, my entire practice could get wiped out overnight. And we've seen that, especially you and I, you and I practiced previously at Frost. I mean, where you have true experts in very narrow areas, we've seen, depending on certain practice areas, it could just go away overnight, based on enforcement activity or based on the changes of law. And so I did a balance of kind of corporate and real estate. And when I first started practicing, it was the .com era, and corporate work was really, really busy. Everyone was going to be the next eBay or Google. And then that cratered. And then everybody's going to get rich doing real estate stuff. And that was busy. And then we had 08 and 09, and then that cratered. Now everyone got back to more traditional corporate stuff. And now things seem to be a pretty good balance. And we also do estate planning, which has always been solid for us. So, you know, I think it's a good idea to not be a total jack of all trades, but not so narrow. And it also keeps things interesting when you've got a bit more of a broader mix. So.
Well, I agree. And one of the focuses of the Legends program has been, how did our legends become proficient? And in your case, what's your advice for new lawyers? How do they become extraordinary in their field of focus?
Well, I think the most important thing that they can do is work for a lawyer that has a practice like they want to have, right? It is almost impossible. You know, I'm always amazed when I see lawyers get out of law school and immediately start a solo practice. Now, sometimes that's just because they needed to do it. Sometimes they just don't want to have a boss. And I think early on in your career, you should be viewing it as an investment in yourself. It shouldn't be about, you know, trying to maximize the amount of money you can make. It needs to be like, okay, I want to be this type of lawyer, I think, and putting yourself in a position to work under, you know, the best lawyers at the best law firm that you can get your foot in the door on. So, you know, I got good at business law and real estate law from working for very good lawyers. I worked for Carlo Wessels as a brand new lawyer, and he was, you know, had his LLM in taxation from NYU. He worked under Marty Horowitz, which was, you know, one of the best business and tax lawyers ever to practice in Northern Kentucky and Greater Cincinnati. And, you know, it was him giving me assignments, me doing them, him telling me how I screwed up, and me learning from that mistake and moving on. So really getting a good mentor and working under somebody who really knows it. And then, you know, CLEs have been important to me. You know, there are many years I would get 2 or 3 times the amount of CLEs you needed, just because I was trying to get better and understand areas. And then from that, I had the opportunity to give CLEs. And what I found interesting is I would agree to give CLEs even if I didn't really totally understand the area as well as I probably should have. But just getting ready to give these CLEs helped me, you know, become more proficient and more of an expert at that area. So
Right.
You know,
And you mentioned alluded to Murr earlier, and now Carlo. Who are some of the other mentors who played a big role in your development? And you know, how do they help you?
Yeah. So our former partner, Bill Robinson, you know, he's always been a great advocate for me over the years, even going back when he was at Greenbaum, Dahl McDonald, and then at Frost. He was always, if I needed help with something, he was always there. He would take time out of his busy schedule, and whether it's something personal I was struggling with, whether I was looking for an opportunity, or, you know, hey, I want to get my foot in the door with this organization. And he would say, wow, you know, yes, and he would make it happen. Or he would say, you know, that's probably not the best fit for you right now. It's a tougher position to get. You need to be more seasoned, but I can get you, here's what you need to be looking at. You know what I mean? So he wasn't always giving me the answer I wanted to hear, but it was the right advice. And it was delivered, it was coming from a guy who I knew cared about my ultimate success. And so I wasn't offended or bothered if he didn't, you know, tell me what I wanted to hear and instantly make that happen. The other thing that he did that was very helpful in my career is when I joined Frost, I'd been practicing at that point for 10, 15 years. And so the folks at Frost kind of let me be, because they figured, hey, Brian's got practice, he knows what he's doing, he's got a book of business. But I really didn't know how to traverse the big firm and how that works. And Bill looked out for me, and he said, look, Brian, he's like, you need to get engaged. We're in Florence, we're in a smaller office, right? And he's like, you need to spend more time in Cincinnati, and you need to get really involved in the practice groups and with some of the best lawyers in the office. And he went so far as to, he said, there's this guy, his name is Reed LeMasters, who was this one of the best real estate lawyers in the region, worked out of the Cincinnati office. And he said, Reed owes me a favor. I helped him with A, B, C, and D. He said, I'm going to ask Reed as a personal favor to me that he starts using you and getting you involved in the real estate practice group and stuff. And he coordinated, and to really solidify it, Bill put together a lunch meeting at the Queen City Club with Reed and Bill and me. And we sat down at this table, and he made the connection. He was telling Reed what a great guy was, and just really playing that all up and telling me how great Reed was. And it was all sincere, but it made both of us feel great. And he looked at Reed and he said, look, I need a favor. He's like, Brian's a great lawyer, but he's over here in Florence, and we need to really get him involved in the firm. And I'd take it as a personal favor to me if you would use Brian on some of your real estate projects that you see the opportunity for. And Reed jumped at it, and he did it. And Reed became one of the biggest mentors in my entire career, and it came later on in my life, my practice. Reed introduced me to he referred to me as part of his A team to everywhere we went, and really looked for ways to promote me with clients and inside the firm and outside the firm, and connecting us, and put a lot of sincere effort at it. And ultimately, one of the culminating deals I ever got to work on is I represented Amazon when they did their global air headquarters here in Florence, and helped them acquiring the land that became part of that project, helping them with the lease with the airport, helping them, with all their zoning and working with the county on that. And it was just a wonderful opportunity that wouldn't have happened had Bill not hooked me up with Reed, and if Reed hadn't really taken me under his wing.
Yeah, a number of the legends have mentioned Bill, and I had the good fortune to work with him as well. I guess a quick, strong recollection I have is that Bill was always right, but I'm not sure I was always happy that he was always right.
Yeah.
Especially now I know that he was right. But at the time, Bill was very direct and in a thoughtful, ultimately caring way.
Yeah.
And that's key.
Yeah, for sure. You always knew that he was coming at it because he cared for you and he wanted the best for you. And so that made it easier to stomach, and he was usually right. And he was something else. The other reason why he was very direct, and people need to realize when you ask for favors and need mentoring and that sort of stuff, sometimes it may not be as exhaustive as you would perhaps are hoping for, but Bill was unbelievably busy, right? He was direct, and he did what he was going to say, and did things very efficiently to help you along your way. But he didn't have time to waste, right?
Yeah, and well, we've talked a little bit. We don't have time to go through all the details of what it's like to be at a smaller firm, mid-sized firm, larger firm.
Yeah.
But now you have your own firm, and it be interested in hearing your perspective about, is this, I don't know if this is something you always wanted to do when you came out of law school. Look, I'm going to have Dunham Law, and it's going to be a growing, thriving firm. How's it going now as compared to your earlier experiences with these other sized firms?
Yeah. So I'm glad I'm doing it now versus at the beginning of my practice. It would have been, I think, I wouldn't have been nearly as efficient learning the practice of law if I had to handle all the administration piece of it. And although I'm sure my wife is watching this is laughing now because she handles all of that. But I wouldn't have been able, all the other things you got to worry about running your own firm, I wouldn't have been able to do that and, become a better lawyer, I think, at the same time. So, I find it really rewarding now. When I was at the large law firm, I wish I'd probably done that earlier in my career. Because I became a much better lawyer. Now, I'm afraid I probably would have maybe gotten pigeonholed, you know what I mean, if I was in a large firm right out of the gate and had too narrow of a practice. But I became a much better lawyer there because I was working under people who were not only they knew the law backwards and forwards, but they were really good working with clients and consultants and all of that stuff. But here at our own firm, I'd never intended on having my own firm. My answer along the years, people would say, you should start your own firm, because I had, developed a book of business but I said, look, I like practicing law and I want to be able to focus on practicing law and not all the other things you have to worry about, with your own firm. But I had this opportunity come about through David Wallace, who was a longtime lawyer to Heritage Bank. He'd actually formed the bank, and he became chairman and CEO of the bank, and said, I need someone to serve as outside general counsel for the bank and take over. And I've heard him tell the story a couple ways, but whether it's 3 on the list or 5 on the list, he's like, I made a list of 3 or 5 people who could serve in this role, and he goes, there's one, and it's you, and then everybody else. And he's like, I want you to do it. And he's like, you can do it wherever you want to do it. He's like, but I think you should start your own firm. And other people that I knew and respected, who had done the small firm, big firm, medium firm, who I respected, I would bounce it off of them and tell them the opportunity and the situation. And keep in mind, this is in the middle of COVID, right?
Right.
They all looked at me and they said, look, you're crazy if you don't give this a shot. And what happens if it doesn't work out? If it doesn't work out, you can always take your clients and go to another firm, and do that own thing. And it was, as my faith is an important part of my practice. And while I was doing all of these kind of conversations, I was involved in this program, Exodus 90, as it's called, and my one goal there was to, kind of not let fear drive my decisions. And when it came down to it, I realized that the only reason why I wouldn't have said yes and tried to do my own firm and see how this goes would have been fear. And, I'm like, look, God's given you this opportunity to say yes to him in this path or turn your back on him.
Right.
So I said yes.
Well, you mentioned your book of business. So were you a natural right out of the gate at business development? How did that happen for you?
I don't think I was a natural, because when I think of naturals, I think of, the type A kind of personality that's really makes an impression when they walk in the room, and you know, just really like, who is, you know, after they finish speaking, it's like, wow, who is that? Or they're really kind of aggressive, salesy or vibe. So it, you know, my approach was just you got to do it natural. You got to be out of your comfort zone some, but mine was more of a kind of a natural, what's natural to me, which is, you know, I started marketing and developing business by first identifying my practice of law, right? What I did, and understanding what I wanted to do, telling people that's what I did and that's what I wanted to do. And then I just got involved in stuff that interested me, sort of like carrying forward that attitude I had in law school. You know, I got involved in the NKBA business and tax law section. You know, I was interested in Republican politics, and I got involved. I was appointed to the Kenton County Republican Party Executive Committee. You know, I got involved in chamber and legacy and things like that. And when I was in those roles, you know, I just tried to do a good job, right? You know, stay in my own lane and just prove that I was reliable and responsible and worked well with others. And that's kind of how I progressed in it.
Well, how long did it take you to start actually developing clients?
I would say, you know, I would get one or two. You know, I always had a couple, right? But it really started to happen when I was probably 7 years out, 5 to 7 years out. And that was primarily because I put the investment in early, right? Started proving myself and getting my name out there and working at it. And then as I got older and more experienced, the folks that I knew in my network now all of a sudden, you know, they had spheres of influence in their world. They were starting businesses, or they were in management or C-level, you know, C-suite level kind of situations where they were the ones choosing who the lawyer should be. And so that's kind of where it really started it.
Well, if you say you make a contact, you're in legacy, and you have a relationship with someone in legacy, you're working on a project together. I mean, is there an appropriate point in time when you just, you know, say, hey, you know, I'd like the opportunity to work for you or with you? How do you do that?
So that's a good question, because I've seen folks, and I've probably fallen victim of it too at times, but I've seen folks that have made the ask too soon or too late. You know, we all know these folks who, you know, get involved in these organizations, and they're very transparent, right? They're instantly trying to like shake you down for work, and like, look, you know, who I hire as my lawyer is really critical to these things, you know, the success of our company. And, you know, I'm not going to just do it because you just showed up at this meeting for the first week, right? And the fact that you're trying to push that on me now tells me that you're not a sincere person. You're not looking out for my best interests. And you also don't have kind of the soft skills or the perception of things that are important to be a good lawyer and counselor, and getting them, traversing them through sticky situations in their career. So on the flip side, I've seen folks where they've been killing it forever and have a great relationship and great reputation, and they think asking for work is unseemly, right? And then what they don't realize is that people oftentimes they want to be asked for work, but they figure like, well, he's never said anything to me, I guess he doesn't want to work with me, right? Or, you know, and so
Yeah.
So I think it's once you've developed a sincere relationship, and you always have to come about it with a sincere concern for their success, and that you really know in your heart that I'm in a position to help you, and I'm the right person to help. And I promise you that if you engage me and I'm not the right person to help in a certain area, I'm going to get you in the right hands. And I'm going to tell you that.
And yeah, it's the best kind of client relationships, I think, come from, shared values and shared experiences. There's a foundation where you trust one another instead of just being thrust into a situation with someone that you don't know you're supposed to represent.
Yeah.
And Brian, you're one of the most trusted counselors on corporate and real estate issues in Greater Cincinnati. In that, one of the purposes of the program is to help newer lawyers. What are what's your general advice to others as to how do you become a trusted counselor for clients?
Well, I think you got to come at it from wanting the best for your client. It needs to be, you have to go into it thinking that it's not about revenue generation, right? I'm not doing this so I can generate more money. You have to assume that you do the right things, right? In the ability to pay your bills is going to flow from it. So, I think the clients, you need to believe that and act that way, and your clients need to feel that. I have a little bit of a leg up. I always am impressed with litigators who can develop a book of business, because generally people are not in the business of getting sued, right? And then once they get out of that, they want to put that behind them as quickly as possible and move on. Whereas, I'm one of the first people that they call because they need to start the entity, right? Or it's the core agreements. And so once you've got that, they feel comfortable to me calling me even for the litigation stuff, right? And so they know I'm their like outside general counsel. And so they can come to me and I'm part of the team. So, even if you're not in that type of corporate real estate role, they need to understand, like, I've got your best interest out for you. I'm interested in what you're doing. I see opportunities to help. You're sharing with them, ways to networking them with other people that may be unrelated to law, that, show that you're caring for them and their success, and really developing that and letting them know, like, hey, look, call me if this, and I can get you in the right hands, and will, if I'm not the right guy.
Yeah. Well, we talked a little bit earlier about how you began to get involved in the community for the Bar Association with your church activities. What were some of your favorite service roles with the church and the community through the years?
So, quickly on the Bar Association thing, Jack, I was a brand new lawyer, and somebody was the head of the business and tax law section, and they weren't really having any meetings at all. And I saw Jack Fisher in the record room, who was the president of the NKBA, and said that. And he's like, yeah, you're right. I've been trying to reinvigorate the sections. You should become president. And I know so-and-so is doing it, doesn't want to do it anymore. And, it just was an opportunity, like the importance of like looking for ways to get involved, and how, you got to ask for it, right? As far as things that I've enjoyed the most, I shifted from the politics stuff because, Northern Kentucky, a lot were so many Republicans here. A lot of politicians felt like they had to be Republican, right? So it wasn't not so much about party politics as and concerns that the party had. It was more about just people saying and doing whatever they had to do to get elected. And I got, cynical about it and said, I want to get more involved in my faith. And so I took that time related to politics and started being involved in my church, and working on myself personally, and then looking for ways to help, whether it was parish council or the church festival, or, the litany of other organizations, which helped build my network, which, these people also send me business as well. But my favorite has been Christ Renews His Parish and the Curcio movement, and they're very similar. One's more at the parish level and the other's at the diocese level, but they put on retreats for individuals, lay people put on these retreats. And, the whole concept is giving them a weekend away so they can help kind of put their life in perspective and think about ways they need to make adjustments, and giving them the tools to help do that. And so both of those have meant a lot to me over the years.
One of the things that we focused on during this 2022 calendar year at the NKBA has been mental health and wellness for attorneys. And we've all had struggles through the years in trying to, even if it's just, how do I get ready for this trial or this business transaction and manage the rest of my life? How do I maintain proper priorities and such? How have you managed stress and a very busy schedule without imploding?
Yeah. Not to sound like a broken record with the faith side of it, but it's been my Catholic faith. I'll never forget, I was very busy and stressed out with a situation in my legal practice where a referral of a referral, I helped with a real estate transaction, and there was some shadiness going on, and then he called me, and I felt like he was recording the call, and it just was stressful, right? And I had the opportunity to participate in a kind of a retreat type weekend with my faith, and it started that journey, and it just helped me keep things in perspective. And one of the great things that the Catholic faith has is the sacrament of reconciliation and confession, and that's a really humbling process, and it requires you to really spend some time and evaluate things that you're doing right and things you're doing wrong, and saying it out loud to another human being. And that's a good process for me, and it brings a lot of peace. And then I'll start my morning and the evenings usually kind of in prayerful reflection on the day. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? What opportunities did I miss? And praying for my coworkers, their families, my clients, opposing counsel, the opposing parties, and that helps put things in perspective. Like life is more important than the practice of law, and we sometimes lose sight of that, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Well, and I know you've had some pivotal moments on matters of professional responsibility and ethics through the years. If you could share one or two of those with us, that would be terrific.
Yeah.
If you're comfortable.
Sure. Yeah. So I had a situation. So, when 08 and 09 came about, and the real estate, market cratered, and the bank issues with the banks and stuff, we all learned a lot from that process. But prior to that, things weren't quite as clear. And I had I was representing a bank in a commercial loan closing, and the borrower had some kind of side contract arrangement with an affiliate, and that was all being factored into this loan. And I was going to document that transaction on our closing statement, and then they didn't want me to do that, and it bothered me, right? And then I asked my client, who's the loan officer, a vice president of the bank, right? And he says, "Nah, don't worry about it. Yeah, you don't need to include that." And my initial reaction and my mindset at the time was, well, they're the client. He represents the bank, who's my client, and they're telling me not to include it on the closing statement, so I don't include it on a closing statement. But once again, my gut was telling me this is not right, and I reached out to Jim Dressman, who I was older, more experienced, banking lawyer, And I trusted him a lot. And I said, Jim, here's the situation. I'm struggling with it. What do you think? And he said, you absolutely have to put that on that settlement statement. And just tell him that Scott, you're not going to handle the closing if it's not on there. And so, which is what I felt like, but I needed that encouragement from it. You know what I mean? So it was me following my gut and then reaching out to somebody more experienced who took the time to candidly tell me what to do. And it was absolutely correct. In that deal, the borrower actually went to prison over it. It was shady. And had I not put that on that settlement statement, it would have looked as though I was kind of part of the process. And even though the bank would have said, I don't care if the vice president told you to do that. You owed the bank a better duty. And so all of that was just a huge learning experience for me.
Well, on matters of ethics and professional responsibility, I mean, it comes into play when we're counseling our clients too, when they express a desire to zig when we think they should zag ethically. What are your views on the counseling role with respect to professionalism and ethics?
Yeah, younger lawyers, we work hard to get clients, right? And we want to do a good job for them. And so we can fall in, not like I'm a younger lawyer, right? But I've moved on beyond the younger lawyers, but we as lawyers, we want to tell them yes, and we'll make it happen, right? But you can lead people down a bad path in doing so, right? And so you need to tell yourself, even though, my job really is to support the client, I need to look out for them almost like in a parenting role, right? I love these people. I care for these people. And this may not be what they want to hear, but it's what they need to hear. And, so when I'm wondering what to say and how to say, I tend to pray about it and say, all right, Lord, tell me what you want to say and how you want me to say it. But I will very clearly say, look, I understand why you're thinking this, but lots of bad things could happen, A, B, C, and D. Here's what you need to do and why. And they almost instantly snap out of it, right? They know in their heart that they shouldn't be going down their path, but they're overwhelmed and they're not thinking clearly. And it's our role as a lawyer to be thinking clearly for them and tell them what they need to know. And they're very appreciative of that. And you just need to remind them, yeah, this is going to be uncomfortable for a while, but you're going to make it 5 times worse, right? If you don't do it the right way.
Well, and one of the things I love about being a counselor is that there is a level of independence and obligation with our advice. And if a client doesn't like straight talk delivered in a respectful way and they choose other counsel, I can live with that. I suspect you feel the same.
Totally do. That's an example of a bad client usually, and that's not a good relationship.
Yeah. And well, we're moving to the end of the program. A couple of standard questions we always ask. Tell us something not widely known that people might find interesting about you.
That's easy. I'm a DJ.
Yes. Well, I knew that, but many people don't. And I will add and volunteer here that Brian is an outstanding DJ. And I've had some of my greatest times with Brian. And when he's and are you staying up with it? Are you still doing it?
Yeah, I mean, since starting the firm, I've had to slow up, but it's, I would say about 15 to 20 events a year still. And once a year I do a DJ battle where you have to play 3 different genres of music in 5 minutes, I think 5 to 7 minutes. And I am by far the oldest person there, and but it's a lot of fun.
Well, let us know when your next gig is,
I will.
so that we can be there.
You know, people always say that about the DJ battles, but I don't want. I stand out like a sore thumb as it is at those events, so I don't want to draw any more attention to myself by showing up with my posse of other attendees. Usually,
Your posse of 50 to 70-year-olds, right?
and then I had my dad there one time videotaping it. My 70-something-year-old dad. That was interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, any final words of wisdom, wit, or advice for the next generation of lawyers in Northern Kentucky, and anything that we didn't cover that you just want to make sure that you work into this hour we have together?
No, I think I covered, that kind of the core sort of stuff. I just say it's important to keep things in perspective with the practice of law. It's not who we are. We forget that as lawyers, it's just what we do for a living. And we need to still be passionate about it. We need to be coming at it the right way as an opportunity to serve our fellow man and, our community, and a lot of opportunities come from it. And, take advantage of those opportunities. But, ultimately our goals are to get to heaven, whatever that looks like for people, and bring people with us. And that's what I try and remind myself in my practice.
Yeah, the whole idea, and I think a lot of lawyers struggle with how do we separate ourselves from our title and our profession? And, does there need to be a separation? I think those are at times very challenging issues for lawyers. I myself probably fall into the camp of I'm a lawyer 24/7, and I have to sometimes take a step back. But yeah, faith does help with those matters, I think, from time to time too. Well, I have checked the chat and Q&A features, and if my technology is correct here, you have answered and addressed everyone's issues, Brian Dunham. And so
that's a relief.
Right. We can't thank you enough. For the attendees out there and for the people who are going to watch this video, I had to really twist Brian's arm to do this because he's an extremely modest and humble individual. And I encourage Brian that it's important to share your experiences because they're valuable and people need to hear them. And Brian, thanks. You took this time today. You stepped outside your comfort zone a little bit for us, and we're very, very grateful.
Well, thanks.
Well, yeah. We have a special thanks to the live attendees today. We do appreciate your support for the program. The program is about more than generating attendance and CLEs and money. There's a larger purpose, but we are grateful when people attend, and we had a nice crowd online today. Our wonderful executive director, Julie Jones, who, by the way, Brian recruited to or helped recruit to the NKBA, and there's an interesting story behind that. We don't have time to tell it today, but when you see Brian next, ask him how he persuaded Julie Jones to become our amazing executive director. She's going to be sending you CLE information for ethics credits. As always, send us your suggestions for future programs. We're going to be at this in 2023. We have a nice list of names of distinguished lawyers in our community as a starting base, and we're looking forward to that for 2023 as well. We know we're better when we collaborate with one another, when we work together to get the best outcome. And with this Legends program, I hope and I believe we're on our way to accomplishing just that. So send your emails with suggestions to me, send them to Julie. Brian, thanks again. And everyone, have a terrific day.
Thanks, Rob.